everyone. Welcome to the first AIGA Atlanta Insider of 2022. My name is Courtney Maka, and I'm your host this month alongside Meg Link. Meg and I are members of the AIGA Atlanta In-House Committee, and we are here to bring you connections with inspiring leaders in our community. I work in-house at the commercial real estate company CBRE as a senior graphic designer.
And I'm a freelance designer.
Today, we are speaking with Paul Stechmesser from Coca-Cola. Paul is a visual designer with over 20 years experience in creative direction, design strategy, and motion graphics. He currently runs the Creative Studios design team at the Coca-Cola Company. Prior to Coke, Paul earned his BFA in graphic design from the University of Tennessee and later worked for a small design shop in Chattanooga. From there, he spent several years working for the Lockheed Martin Aeronautics Company. He also earned his BFA in graphic design from the Savannah College of Art and Design, and he currently lives in Atlanta with his wife and 3 children. Before we dive in, I'd like to introduce you to the rest of the AIGA In-House Committee. We are a small but mighty group, and we've actually grown a bit recently. There's 2 folks on this slide that are missing, so we hope that you'll see both Lily and Adam on future calls. The in-house committee is committed to bringing you all the best in-house content from the Atlanta community, and if you're at all interested in joining our group, please reach out to our board chair, Lucas Alvarez, here. And now I'd like to pass the floor over to Amy Mangan from Robert Half with the pulse on local design job trends in her Market Minute.
Thank you, Courtney. Amy Mangan from Robert Half, Marketing and Creative. And I'm excited to share some awesome news in the job market with you on the next slide. It is Groundhog Day, and it might feel like Groundhog Day because last February, in our Market Minute, we actually announced that Airbnb was planning to come to Atlanta, not the entire company, obviously putting a hub here. Well, that hub has officially opened in West Midtown. So if you're looking for a role and might want to work at Airbnb, keep your eyes peeled and set an alert on their jobs page. Also, the unemployment rate specific to Atlanta, the most recent data we have is for November 21, is 2.8%. That is full employment, everyone. It is very difficult to find talent in our state, in our market right now. And nationally, the unemployment rate for college degree workers over the age of 25 is 2.1% as of January. So that is incredibly low. Also, it's not on here because it was just came out last night, the BLS report, which is the December jobs report, 10.9 million open jobs in the US. The quit rate remained incredibly high at 2.9%, which nets out to 4.3 million people quitting their jobs proactively throughout the month of December. And then 6.3 million people were hired last month as well. So that's pretty crazy, very strong job market. So let's talk about what's kind of happening on the next slide. So 41% of people are saying they're planning to look for a new job within the next 6 months. So all of these job changes have been occurring through, the numbers that we're sharing, and even more people are planning to look. The 3 main reasons that they're telling us they want to look for a new job would be a salary boost, better benefits and perks, and then the ability to work remotely permanently if they're not being offered that moving forward at their job. You can also see on that chart, just sort of like age and tenure wise, who's looking in the next few months. And really it's that mid-career point that we're seeing the most movement. 28% of people are saying they would in fact quit their job without another job lined up. So if you are a leader on a team, it is very important that you're proactive in trying to retain your folks. I am glad to help give you any ideas and tips if you'd like to chat about that. And then 54% of people are interested in fully remote roles that would not even be with companies that are local to their state or city. So very, we're trending in that remote space still. We're really seeing a lot of shakeups. And on the next slide, you will see that 40% of marketing and creative leaders are saying that the specific roles that they're really challenged with right now are digital design and production. I would say in the Atlanta market and in a lot of my colleagues' markets as well, we're also really seeing a challenge with project management hiring, whether that be for creative project management, digital, or kind of marketing generalists. It is there are just very few PMs out there right now. So these are kind of the hot skill sets that we're seeing the most of. Also, how are companies winning the race for talent? So when companies are open to fully remote talent and really looking to expand the talent pool, and Paul, no, it's funny. So 54% of managers are saying that when they expand that talent pool to not just their local geography, they're getting more applications. 48% are saying they're able to hire without compromising the skill set. That's huge to me. So you may not be able to find the exact skill set that you want local to your market today, but if you expand that, you may be more likely to actually hire the right person. And then 45% say they've benefited from lower price point markets by hiring, outside of their local market. Not that you should ever undercut someone or their value or their worth. Absolutely don't do that. But obviously the cost of living changes from city to city and place to place. So it's something to consider if you're desperate to hire. So it's a very challenging hiring market. It's a very hot market. I do agree with Paul. Don't quit your job without another one. But I mean, people are saying they're going to do it. So if you need help to hire or you are looking for a role, my contact info is here. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me via email, LinkedIn. That QR code will take you to my business card as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to Courtney.
Thanks, Amy. Reminder to everyone who's listening in, we're going to have a short Q&A at the end, so feel free to use the Q&A feature throughout the conversation to populate some questions, and then Meg and I will funnel those over to Paul throughout the conversation. And now, time to chat with Paul. Hey, Paul, thanks for joining us today.
Hey there, how are you?
I am so great on this lovely Wednesday, this lovely Groundhog's Day. I hope you're well as well.
I'm doing very well, and it is Groundhog's Day, and I love Groundhog Day. So I love the movie anyway. The movie is classic.
The movie is wonderful, and I feel like it's been too long since I've seen it. So challenge you all to rewatch that and appreciate Bill Murray. So let's jump right in. Paul, will you share what you do in your role as design manager at Coke?
Sure. Mostly I try to keep up with the smart people on my team because they're wonderful. I know a lot of them are here, so hello to my team that's on the call. But I manage a team of designers and animators within a larger team that is Coca-Cola Studios, and we do a lot of work for the company. We have a video team that's fantastic. We have outstanding project managers. We have creative writers. We have content strategists. Everyone on our team is just super creative, and I just am very grateful that I'm a part of it and able to work alongside them. And so most of the work that we do is for what we refer to as PACs, public affairs and communications. And we focus a lot of our work on sustainability and governance. But we have been breaking out recently into doing some brand work, which is super exciting for our team. It's the space we want to be in. It's where we can really flex our creative muscle. And yeah, that's about it. We have, when we started the pandemic, I think we had around 5 people. I'm a little unsure. I think it was either 4 or 5. And as of today, I believe we have 20 people plus 5 contractors or freelancers. So our team is really growing and really trying to tell the stories. We're trying to, Coca-Cola does not do a great job at telling the world all of the great things we do outside of make beverages. And so part of what my team does is try to tell that story to the world and do it in an engaging and creative way.
That's amazing. I think that it says something that you're aiming for that goal of telling the Coca-Cola sustainability story, and you've grown so much during the pandemic of all times. So clearly you all are doing something right, and it's resonating with the company and other folks. So that's really great. So I'm curious, where you kind of started your career? So after going to school, what did you, what were some of your early design experiences?
Sure. Well, I started doing design work, all the way back in high school, probably like most of the people on the call. I was a yearbook nerd, and so I was on the yearbook staff at my high school. And that was really when I sort of, we were working in Aldus PageMaker and Quark Express and things like that. And that's when I stepped out of Microsoft Paint into like big boy programs and really thought, this is something that, I enjoyed doing. And then, went to college, and then I got my very first, I only interviewed for one job out of college, and I got the job, and I took it, and it was in Chattanooga. It was with a small company that no longer exists. They were called Combiz, and we did websites. This was back when, people would say, I need a Flash website. And we'd be like, great, we can make Flash websites. And yes, everything was over designed and clunky, but it was a lot of fun. It was a very small shop. It was a 12-person agency. I think there were 3 designers total. After September 11th happened, the company wasn't solvent. So I remember it was a Wednesday, and the CEO of the company was sitting in there, and we all came in, and he said, you guys have till Friday to clean out your desks. So we all went to the bar, of course, what else do you do? And I had a lot of friends living in Atlanta at the time. And so I called them up and asked them what they were doing that weekend. And they were like, yeah, we're just, hanging out. And I said, well, do you mind if I come down? And so I ended up living on a couch for 6 months and had a blast doing it. I was able to land a job at Lockheed Martin up in Marietta. And I worked there on the F-22 program, if there's any aerospace nerds out there. I was the lead graphic designer at Lockheed Martin. And, that was sort of the point in my career where I kind of felt like I made it. My dad was in the Air Force, and so he was super proud of me. I remember when I originally wanted to get into design, he's an economics guy, and he wasn't real aware of what the design world was. And so he was sort of skeptical of my career choices. But when I made it to Lockheed and was working on, basically working for the government, he was super proud. And not that he wasn't proud before, but, I think he realized like, wow, like there are companies that hire artists, and this is a great career. And, so ever since then, that was when I was like, man, I made it. I'm the king of the world. So it was a great feeling.
I think that a lot of designers are familiar with that conversation with their parents saying, so what do you do all day? Like, do you draw pictures all day? And you're like, well, not exactly. So it's nice that you were able to have that.
When they have computer issues, they contact you and they think that you know how to fix computers because you're a designer.
You make websites, therefore you are IT, right? Right. But so you were at Lockheed for a while, but eventually you started going back to school at the same time, I think.
Yeah, so I was with Lockheed almost 10 years. I think I missed my 10-year mark at Lockheed by like 2 or 3 months before I came to Coke. And I had some really good instructors at the University of Tennessee. I still keep up with them. And I just sort of admired what they did. I admired teaching. I admired being in the academic world and sort of the creativity that flows. Basically, the only restriction you have is what's in your head and time, deadlines. Everything else was on the table. Like there was no budgetary concerns or anything like that. So I really enjoyed just the creativity that was happening at the university level. And so I always felt like I wanted to get into teaching, and you had to have a terminal degree to do that. And so I figured, well, I better go back and get my master's degree. And living in Georgia, SCAD was a big school, and it was a good school. And so I talked about it for a long time. And I remember very vividly talking about it. And my wife kind of like stopped me in my tracks, and she looked at me and said, will you shut up and either go to school or just stop talking about it? And so I was like, you're right. And so I did. I applied at SCAD from a master's, and I got in. And I didn't plan on quitting my job. And so I worked full time and went to school. And so I would, I also was growing a family at the time. So at that time, we had our first child, Lily. And so I made a commitment that I would not let school interfere with work or family. And so it was definitely third priority of those things. And so I would start school around 9 or 10 at night. And I remember, man, some days I worked around the clock and would shower and go right to work. And so I took one class per quarter. It took me 5 years to graduate. I took one semester off to write my thesis. And yeah, that was a challenging time, for me, just because of time constraints. But I really enjoyed just getting back to school. And I remember very vividly it was right at the end of my time at SCAD. I was talking with my thesis committee chair member, and she said, when you become a professor, you can do this kind of stuff all the time. And she was referring to like writing a thesis. And I stopped and I said, what? What do you mean? And she said, yeah, when you're a professor, it's expected that you're going to be published several times a year. And I said, so I'm going to have to write a thesis like 3 times a year? And she's like, yeah. And she was real excited. And I could feel my balloon just like shrinking. And I thought, okay, I don't enjoy writing 90-page thesis on design. And so I knew then, I was like, well, I'm going to get my master's degree, but I don't think teaching is going to be the play for me. So yeah, it was a great experience. But halfway through my master's, I was feeling sort of wanting a little bit more. Lockheed is a wonderful company to work for. I still really admire that company, the things that they do. But at its core, Lockheed is an engineering company. And so I wanted to work for a company that really valued, not engineering design, but sort of visual design. And so when you live in Atlanta, there's a select few companies big companies that do that. And Coca-Cola was at the top of the list. And so I kind of knew, Home Depot, Delta, Chick-fil-A, there were some big Atlanta companies that I wanted, but it was always Coca-Cola was sort of like the holy grail for me at the time. And so I just kind of made it my mission to find a job here.
But I feel like that whole experience, it really shows a lot, both about you with planning to make the transition to school and making it work for you and your schedule with it sounds like there's a lot of balls to juggle during that time. So you scaled it to your life. And then also having such a supportive partner who was just like, okay, time to make this happen. It's clearly what you're interested in doing. Like, you just have to take that step. So I'm curious, you had your eyes on Coca-Cola. Was there anything specific about it that drew you there, or how did you actually end up landing that job?
Yeah, I mean, what drew me there, it's Coca-Cola. Like I did not grow up in the South. I grew up in Ohio, but I've lived in the South since the mid-90s. And, it's just sort of like the most iconic company. They have the best ads. They have the best drink, best beverages. Before I worked at Coke, I only knew Coke as a beverage company, and specifically Coca-Cola. I had no idea that they owned, 400 brands or whatever. And so, but I just knew that, from a design perspective, I had heard that, they didn't consider themselves a beverage company. They considered themselves a marketing company, and that really, perked me up, and I thought, man, these guys get it. They understand what it's like to visually communicate well. And so that drew me in. I had a good friend of mine who worked for Coke at the time, and so I just reached out to her, and I think she was like, I think you're crazy, but so she hooked me up with some people at Coke to sort of get my foot in the door. I applied for a few positions that in hindsight were probably 17 pay grades above what I should have been applying for. And those people, I don't even remember their names, but they were gracious enough to just take a call from some kid who didn't really know anything about Coke or design, and very expertly and gently, I think, put me in my place a little bit. And I realized sort of I needed to do a lot more work to get in with a company like Coke, and so I did. And I just kept those lines of communication open. I checked job boards every single day. I emailed everyone I knew that sort of knew anything about Coke or had ever worked for Coke. And 99% of them were dead ends, but I did finally get a call from Coke. And I interviewed. It was a wonderful experience. And without question, if they would have offered me 50% less than what I was asking, I probably would have taken it. Just because it was, if I thought like I had made it when I worked for Lockheed, when I got my job at Coke, I thought I sort of ruled the world. It was such a great feeling. And I still feel that way.
So great. I think it's great when you find a place that really aligns with you both.
Yeah. And, the interesting thing is, when I was looking at Coke, I mentioned like all I knew about Coke was soda water, sugar water. And it wasn't really until I started working there that I realized all of the good that Coke does outside of beverages. I've told this story to many people multiple times, but the fact that Coke makes beverages is sort of besides the point once you get in the doors. Making beverages allows the company to really do all of the other work that it does. And this gets back to what I mentioned at the beginning about sort of where our team fits in, is we don't necessarily do a great job of the global good that the company does for sustainability and recycling and water and women's empowerment. And so once I was made aware of this, then my passion for the company really started to grow. I thought, man, yeah, we make Sprite and Fanta and all these other things that taste delicious and they're wonderful. But what the company does on the global stage is really what people need to know about, and where I think, I don't want to speak for everyone that works at Coke, but I think it's where a lot of the passion for Coke from its employees comes from. Just the amount of amazing things that happen behind the scenes. There's a quote that rolls around the halls of Coke. It was attributed to one of our previous CEOs, but I think he borrowed it from somewhere else, I think. And that's, there's no telling what we can accomplish when you don't mind, who gets credit for it. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the idea is that Coke has had for so long is we're going to do all of these great things and we're really not going to say anything about them. But I think the company is sort of shifting that narrative and saying we're still going to do all these great things. In fact, we're going to do more great things, but now we're just going to tell people about it and we're going to let people know what we're doing. So the trick is, and the communicative strategy is finding out what is the best narrative to tell. What is the best voice? What are the best channels to tell those stories? And that's sort of where we are today.
That's so great. So that's kind of like your team's mission. So I'm curious. So I think a lot of folks like myself, when I first heard that we were going to be having a conversation, I wasn't aware of this part of Coca-Cola's structure. Could you give a bit of a high level view of the different sort of creative teams and maybe it'll connect some dots for some other folks too who may have been curious about what's behind the curtain at the huge Coca-Cola Company of Atlanta.
Sure. It's like, when you say like, I'm from Ohio, or I went to such and such school, people say, oh, well, do you know so-and-so? And you're like, no, there's 200,000 people that work there. And so a lot of people will ask me, do you know so-and-so designer? And most of the time it's yes, or at least I'm familiar with them, or I've been in meetings with them. But a lot of times it's also no, because the company is big and there are multiple design teams. When I first started working for Coke, it was a very fractured company. Specifically, I'll shift from that to say the design world at Coke was very fractured. You had our team, you had a global team, you had a North American team, you had another North American team that did different things than the other North American team, and not all the teams talked with each other. And it was sort of chaotic. In the last 4 to 5 years, that's really started to solidify more, to where the teams are being drawn closer together and are starting to cooperate more, and share things. We had a call this morning. It's called the Global Design Coalition call. It's at 7:30 because it's global. So it's 7:30 our time, but it's 7:30 for someone in Asia, 7:30 at night for them. And so we get everyone together and we share work, we share stories. It's one of my most favorite meetings of the month. But anyway, to sort of circle back to answer your question, we have our team, which is it's an internal comms team. There's a global design team, which handles a lot of the global missions. They're the steward of global brands. They come up with a lot of the global narratives for the brands. And then each operating unit, or OU as we call them, has their own separate team. So there's a North American design team. There's a Latin American design team. There's a European design team. But now we're all networked and we're all talking and sharing and collaborating. So yeah, there's lots of different design teams, but we're being pulled in by excellent leadership in the design world at Coke. And I think you will start to see more coming out of Coca-Cola from a design perspective in a unified front, as opposed to a fractured front, which if you're in the system, it's a breath of fresh air. So there's some really exciting things that will be coming from the design world at Coke.
So great. I think it's wonderful when companies who have found themselves siloed start to take down those walls and leverage the talent that you have in-house. Because I know there's a lot of brands out there that both use their in-house teams, but then they also outsource and work with agencies. And then it's just, at the end of the day, everyone's got their hands in it. And how do you pull it all in to have a kind of like singular Coke brand that you're putting out to the public? So thank you for elaborating on the behind the scenes there. Now I'm kind of more curious about your specific team that you oversee, that you said you're about 20 something people at this point. And it sounds like they work in a lot of different mediums. They handle different specific skills. How do you foster like an environment where everyone can thrive together?
That's a great question. It's not easy. And just to be clear, that team of 20 people, my team consists of, I think we have 5. So we have 2 animators, 2 full-time designers, and then I have a freelance designer as well. So I sort of have a smaller piece of that overall team. But I really love seeing and pushing people into new areas of the practice and of the industry. And I guess that goes back to my deep-seated desire that I held, why I went back to grad school, why I did some of the things I did in my life, was because I like watching people learn and grow. I like watching people who don't know anything about animation learn how to animate. And I really love nothing more than seeing, sometimes you can actually see like the light bulb go off in people, and you can actually see them learn and grow. And it's one thing when your children are doing that, but when you see like adults do that and they're at the top of their game, they're at the top of their practice, and they realize, man, I really don't know everything. In fact, like the more you know, the more you realize that you know less and less each day. And I love watching people learn to embrace scary things that they're not unsure of and solve problems that they didn't think they had the skill sets for. And so one of the things I try to do within my team is constantly push them into new territories and say, okay, you have been a print designer your whole life. Well, how can we take that and apply it to UX design? And you don't know what UX design is? Great. Like let's figure this out together. Or you've never animated anything before? Did you know that you can take all of this stuff and make it move and make it like awesome? And by the way, you can tell stories that way. We can put it on Twitter and Instagram. People like it. And so just seeing that growth, and it's more of a joy for me than I think maybe for them. So I think when I'm happy and seeing that, it sort of hopefully cascades down to the team.
It sounds like a really it's like an incubator environment, sort of, where you're like, hey, yes, we hired you for this thing, but feel free to stretch your limits and your boundaries and take risks and move into areas that are maybe not what we initially hired you for, but there's some potential that you could find like a spark out there.
Yeah, and and it's not necessarily new skill sets, but it's also I think that mentality is very transferable to just problems in general. So as an example, we're working on a rather large project right now, where just like this week, yesterday, last night, today, we're running into some issues with how to deliver it effectively. And one of the animators on my team, we had come up with a solution that wasn't great, but it sort of checked the box and it did the things. And this guy on my team kept like coming back with like, well, we can do this, and here's another, and so like I can see people really trying to learn and grow and do new things and solve problems that are really tricky and sticky, and think about things differently in order to make the deliverables for our clients like the best that they can be. And really, I always try to do the things that you say you're going to do and then meet or exceed expectations. And I think this definitely falls in the like exceed expectations. Like our team, I feel like constantly exceeds expectations, sometimes to our own detriment, but it's just that mentality of sort of never settling for what's comfortable and never settling for this is what I know and this is what I'm going to stick to. It's more, this is what I know, I'm going to stick to this, and then I'm going to add on other things that make it even better, that make that experience for our clients, for our teammates, and for the company that much better.
That sounds like a great environment and mindset. So I would love if you could chat a little bit about some specific projects that your team has worked on, to give a little color for folks listening in who maybe don't realize that they've seen something, or maybe they haven't seen it, just to get an idea of like some of your favorite projects you've worked on.
Sure. So we have a couple of different categories of projects. I can tell you one of my more favorite projects that I worked on was I think it was 1 or 2 years ago now. With COVID happening, and the older I get, the less I have a good reference for time. So this could have happened a year ago. It could have happened 2 years ago. I don't remember. But it was a business development project, which we don't really get that often on our team. And I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about it, like specifically. So I'm going to keep it sort of vague. But there is a large restaurant and casino chain that we stole the business from Little Blue, and seeing the immediate business value of what we did really had a profound impact on me. And this was, I've been working at Coke for several years, and this was sort of a new experience for me of seeing like, wow, we just did something that is going to bring like lots of dollars to this company, and it's going to make it that much better. And those dollars that we bring to the company are the very thing that allow us to do all the other stuff I was talking about. So for me, it wasn't like great, like, you know, more money for the company. It was like more money for the company to allow us to solve plastic, to solve plant bottle, to solve no sugar, like to address women's empowerment and recycling and water sustainability. So like when you think about it in those terms, it really motivates you to do good things. And so that project was super cool. And we had a really great pitch. We went, I wasn't able to go, but we went down to this company, and when you can think about like creative pitches and all of the things you can do beyond a presentation, and bringing like live music into it, and just adding those extra touches for some of that work, it was really fulfilling for me. And we won the bid, and we got the business, and that of course is like the cherry on top. And so I think, you know, seeing the immediate value of the work that we do for the company was really great. Another one was Hilltop. If you guys are old enough to remember the old Hilltop ad from the 70s. Hey, there it is. We were asked by our licensing team to create a video for Hilltop that was sort of like a remake of it, and this was in line with the 50-year anniversary from 1971 to 2021. And so they did a whole clothing line. So this video was released at the World of Coke, I think down in Disney World. There's another like Coca-Cola store. And then also a lot of our partners that we have licensing agreements with. So I think like PacSun, I think, was a big part of this. The reason that I really enjoyed this one was because this was the first project that our team worked on when we had most of the major players on our team in place. So I mentioned we went from like 5 people to 20. So when we did this project, we had all the pieces in place that we had been building. And this was the first project that I worked on within our team where we truly collaborated as a team. And we, you know, even within our team, silos existed, and we were able to sort of shatter all those silos, work hand in hand with the video team. We brought animation in. We brought I have a woman on our team who's an amazing illustrator, and so, you know, the typography in here, she drew, and we animated it, and it was just like we had like a little team of people that animated and illustrated and then put it into video, and then we edited video together. We had sound design. We collaborated globally with editors, and so it felt to me like, if you've ever played sports before, team sports specifically, and everyone on the team like hits a home run every time, and everyone makes the play, it was just like, it was a full effort, and no one on the team, at least from my perspective, like everyone contributed super successfully. And there were some ups and downs on the project, but at the end of the day, like we were all super proud of it. There wasn't a single person that was like, it was okay. Like everyone was really jazzed about it and really psyched about it. And it was just such a great experience. And then another similar project was a documentary series we did that was all internal. And it was a new take on things. We tried to make internal comms to the company. Our goal was actually to get this series on Netflix. That was sort of the lofty goal that we set for ourselves. And I think that the first episode of it, we were able to do the way that we wanted to do it, and it was fantastic. And the subsequent episodes were also fantastic, but the more people got exposed to it, the more sort of cooks in the kitchen from outside of our team we got. which was good because there was a lot of good insight and input coming. But the first sort of episode we did, I felt like we really flexed our creative muscle and we really did something that the company had never seen before, particularly from an internal comms perspective. Nobody, to my knowledge, was doing this kind of work. No, and we did it right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so, you know, I don't need to explain to you guys what that's like, but, you know, we were mailing kits out to people to film themselves and built instruction guides on how to light your house and how to do all, you know, how to do all this stuff that no one knew how to do on a global scale. And when we got the footage back, you know, it was excellent. It was such a great project. We worked at lightning speed, and I was so proud of the way that it turned out. And I think I mentioned earlier, like sometimes it's to the detriment that we sort of over deliver, and I think this was the case where I think we changed the way that the company communicates in a good way. But suddenly, I think we were all looking at each other like, "Holy crap! Like we have a lot of work to do," which is good. But I think people that sit on the high levels at Coke saw the intrinsic value that our team brings. So that was sort of, I think, the takeaway from that project.
Yeah, it sounds
And I
like,
think,
and you,
yeah, I was gonna say, I
or,
think
I mean,
go ahead.
no, I feel like maybe you'll cover whatever I say.
Yeah, I was gonna say the common thread throughout all of these is storytelling and how we were able to tell the story, you know, from a business development standpoint. We were able to tell why Coca-Cola is a good choice from a business standpoint. We were able to tell a story externally, you know, of what it means to share a Coke. You know, I'd like to buy the world of Coke. Like, what is that? So on one side, you have like tell the story to get dollars. The other side, you have tell the story to gain, you know, loyalty and brand love. And then sort of in the middle, you have, I think where a lot of companies really fail is tell the story to your employees, like make them believe in what you're doing. You know, a lot of people, unfortunately, have jobs where they sit and look at Excel sheets all day or PowerPoint charts all day. And they may not feel that brand love. They may not feel the good that the company is doing. So, you know, when you can tell the story in different ways and do it successfully and hit all sorts of different marks, it's really gratifying.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that. It's like the recurring thread is how human stories are and how much like emotional draw folks can get from that. Like just you telling all of these stories about these projects and working at Coca-Cola and like the brand vision, like I'm having positive Coca-Cola feelings as a result of it because storytelling is just so key to being a person. So I think that's great. And I love that your team has grown so much so they can continue to both present to the world as well as your internal folks that big vision. It kind of goes along with we have a lot of questions. You've perked a lot of interest among folks, so we're going to transition to some of them. So you mentioned you did this internal project, this documentary series where you had to get folks on the same page. And someone asked about just in general, like when you're in a large company with so many design teams and so many people, like what's the process of keeping people all on the same page as far as like the brand vision, brand guidelines, that whole thing? Is that something that you all struggle with, or is it pretty figured out?
Yes, we do struggle with it. We are getting better at it every day. Prior to, so the Coca-Cola Company, which is, you know, who I work for, our team, we are not assigned to a single brand. So we don't work for Sprite or Fanta or Diet Coke. We work for the company. And so the Coca-Cola Company, in terms of like visual identity system, we just released a new visual identity system a couple of years ago. I think it's been 2 years now, or we're in the second year. Prior to that, you had to hunt down It's amazing to think the company's been in existence for 138 years, 100, and so prior to that, you had to hunt for the visual identity system or know who had it. There wasn't really a good central location for it. Now, we're starting to build standards websites where anybody can go and download assets and get everything they need. So yeah, we do struggle with it, and we do try to find new ways to get people aligned on the same topic. We have more global town halls now than we used to, I feel like, or at least they're communicated more effectively now. We have good leadership. We have good leadership that recognizes this, and I'm not even talking necessarily about our CEO, who I think is a great leader, but I think we have good leadership within the design community, and we have people who want to bring the design community together, and are not just focused on their own swim lane, but they're focused on the entire pool. And so when you have that, it really makes things easy for people to get buy-in and help sell and communicate, to the entire company.
That's great. That's some great strategies to keep you all in alignment with one another. Another question that we have kind of is a tangent of that. So someone asked earlier in the conversation what advice you have for someone who may be stepping into a creative management role. Do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the advice that I have, and this is something that I probably should not be giving advice here, because I don't have it figured out. You should only talk about things as they say. The biggest thing for me is going from a design role to a management role. The biggest thing that I have struggled with, I struggle with it at noon today, before getting on this meeting, is at a certain point, you have to design less. You have to do the thing that you love to do, the reason why you became a designer. You have to do that less, and you have to do other things more. And so it becomes very hard to be a leader and a manager and then not design. When a juicy project comes in, you're so tempted to be like, oh, I can't wait to do this and design. I'm going to get in there and, I'm going to work my tail off. But you're like, no, I'm going to give this to this person because they're also an excellent designer. And it just means that I'm not going to move the pixels around, which is, it's like that was the reason you became a designer was because you loved working in Illustrator or Photoshop or After Effects. And then suddenly you're no longer doing that. And then suddenly you become rusty at it. And you have the language and the thought and the strategy and the vision, but you get into Photoshop and realize the last time you opened it was 2019 and there are 6 versions past you now. And, suddenly you feel old. And so I still try to, I guess my advice would be, you are going to have to figure out, do you like designing or do you like managing designers better? And there are pros and cons to both, but I think it's very hard to be effective at both at the same time. But I do still like to design things when I can. I design a lot of stuff on my own that is not Coke related, that isn't related to anything. I just do it for fun, and then I delete it, just to feel relevant, at least to myself in the design world. But yeah, I mean, it's very hard to cross that bridge and have one foot in both doors. I know that there are people that do it and do it well. I was probably not able to do it as well as I should have. But yeah, it's a hard thing. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
great.
I
I think that resonates, and that makes a lot of sense, and it's something that folks should look out for sure. We had a couple questions. It goes back to the brand guidelines question that I asked you before. A few people were asking, how do you stay fresh and inspired as a team while working consistently, but then also like consistent with brand standards, but then also trying to innovate and try new things? Like, how do you balance that line on your team?
So I don't know how many people are parents on this call, but one of the joys of being a parent or quote unquote making rules for other people is that you get to break them, and so like when you are the people that make the brand guidelines, you know exactly how to break them and how to it's for certain things, it depends on what the execution is. For certain things, the visual identity system and the brand guidelines are a Bible. For other things, it's merely a guide. And it's like, I think maybe social would be a good example of it's merely a guide, and we can really try to break out of being so rigid and strict. I think that there's just a lot of opportunity to be in the same ballpark and use the same visual language as the visual identity system, but to come up with new ideas. And sort of that is the challenge of a big company and being, within the brand guidelines, is how can we take what we're working on and not only make it fresh and innovative for everyone else, but make it fresh and fun for us. I mean, we're the ones touching the work day in and day out. We're the ones with the same rules and guidelines and fonts. I've used this same font for the last 10 years. Like, how do I make it new? And we look at inspiration from everywhere. We look outside the window. We look on the computer. We listen to what people are saying about the brand. And on my team, we share a lot of just cool stuff that we see and come across. It's amazing, Instagram and Pinterest and things like that have really made it easy for people to find inspiration. And it may not be a visual inspiration. It may just be an idea that you see that you can translate into whatever system that you're working in. Make something that is expected, and then make something that is unexpected, and then make something that scares people. That was something my boss says to us that I think she got from a conference, but it's really, credit to her. I'll work on something. And I remember one project very specifically where she kind of messaged me and was like, "Paul, seriously?" And like, I knew exactly what she was talking about. And I was like, "You're right, I got it." And I went back to the drawing board and I came up with something that was like, I thought was, it was the most amazing design ever. It was totally great. Probably not, but you do get stagnant. You do get tired, and you do design in ruts. And it's, particularly during COVID, we're all working from home, or at least I am. I don't know about everyone else, but that to me is the hardest thing about, I guess, forget everything I just said. The hardest thing about it is working from home and not being able to be with your team day in and day out and just share that instant idea with people and be like, "Oh man, that reminds me. Have you looked at it this way?" So you have to be very intentional with your team meetings and sort of the time that you have to do that. So it's less organic, but
Yeah.
That's why, that's where innovation comes from, I guess, is having restrictions.
This is very true. I agree with that. I think we have time for one more question. So I think we're going to end with one that we received earlier. So someone was asking, maybe earlier in your career, in your first job, if you made any mistakes or you did something that you wish you did differently. Do you have any advice for younger you that perhaps could apply, maybe just to yourself, maybe to others younger in their career on this call?
Yeah, I would say make more mistakes. One of my flaws is that I constantly seek validation, and I feel like that inhibits me from time to time on doing things. I just mentioned do something expected, do something unexpected. Like do more stuff that scares people. Like do more stuff that you think isn't gonna work. You know, I wish that even now, I wish my team would do more things that when we're in a brainstorming meeting and someone has an idea and they're like, oh, that will never work. Like that's the idea that you should go with. Like that's the one that's really gonna punch people in the stomach or turn heads or make it fun for the people creating it. And then it's just how do you make that idea feasible given whatever constraints you have? So my advice to myself would be, don't be so timid. Like, you know, ask that person out, go for that coffee, like take that call, go for that, whatever it is, and don't seek validation in doing so, and just do it.
I love that. That's empowering. I feel like it's something that resonates with me, and I'm sure with many others who are on this call. And it's a wonderful way to end our conversation today. So thank you so much for chatting with us. I think it's been a wonderful hour for me. Hopefully everyone else agrees. And as far as AIGA Atlanta goes, we have a whole bunch more of these planned for the year. So check out our website for the details on the next webinar next month. And if you have any feedback, again, reach out to Lucas Alvarez. We're always here looking for new folks to join us. And yeah, thank you, Paul. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.